look at you. You just got that phone screen. You booked that. You did that. Okay. And so while there's a ton of tips on here, including my own about how to prepare for interviews, there's not very many on how to prepare for screens, which we're going to get into with how to play the corporate game, because you can't play the game if you don't know the rules, y'all. Hi, my name is Farley Dines. I'm a chief operating officer, having scaled operations for over a decade and in over 6 fields. And the first thing we're going to start with is why. Why do recruiters have phone screens? Well, if they're being leveraged strategically, recruiters are holistically assessing whether or not candidates not only meet the requirements of the JD at the base level, meet the requirements the hiring manager is looking for in regards to skill set beyond, potential job descriptions requirements. Maybe they're looking for somebody who has been in a specific field for a long time. Maybe they're looking for somebody who has worked with an archetype of partner before. But regardless, like, they're looking holistically at the hiring manager's needs, the JDs, and most importantly as well, the business needs of the organization, right? So you might have been in a role for 10 years, but if that role is not necessarily applicable or does not seem applicable to the role that you're applying to in another company, then they may want to have a recruiter do a screening with you to assess whether or not that initial perception is correct, especially because you have so much experience, which gets me into what to say and what to do when you're being asked some questions. Now, the recruiter might ask you first, why are you interested in the role? And I want you to answer it very similarly to how you would a hiring manager, but I want you to be real specific about transferability. Remember, the recruiter is trying to assess whether or not these candidates have the applicable experience to marry with what the business needs are for the organization. So you need to color that by sharing how your work is applicable and relevant to what they may need. Now, you can't obviously guess what they may need in real time if they don't tell you, but through that research, which I walked through in a previous How to Play the Corporate Game video, through the assessment of what's going on LinkedIn and kind of what's in the news relating to the organization, you can make assessments as to where within your experience they may want to hear that is applicable to what they may need. And that's what the recruiter is going to want to pick up to ensure that A, it's not going to be a huge lift for the organization, but most importantly too, it's applicable as well to you and your experience and ultimately what you're looking for. After that, a recruiter may ask you specific questions as it relates to your skill set, like they may ask you to walk through that. And when you're doing that, again, zero in, be concise. Again, these screenings are really supposed to be very high level and recruiters go through a lot of them. So you want to ensure that you are concise and to the point. My recommendation is picking 2 or 3 things that you are really proud of in your experience and in your work that you could speak confidently about. Remember, if you're on a phone screen, right, have your notes next to you. Remember that you can really have that, as a guide so that you're not trying to think of stuff on the fly. Write those things down that you think will really help you stand out and shine over the phone or over the virtual Zoom, because it'll enable you to quickly reference things that you think are going to be applicable and demonstrate to the recruiter things that you are excited about as it relates to your skill set, which you'll also feel excited about, which will come across, whether that be on the phone or whether that be virtually during the screening process. Now, if you're in a current role, they may ask you, why are you leaving? Like, what's the tea there? And so this is a really great opportunity for you, again, to zero in on your forward growth, why you're excited to grow with this organization based off of the research you've done. When you are excited and prepared and talking about how you can plug into these metrics and these trajectories that you're seeing from your research, that is going to, again, demonstrate to the recruiter that this isn't just a job, this is the job. And so make sure that you are thinking forwardly. Oftentimes, especially at least in my experience, candidates will say either, I just really feel like I wasn't getting the growth opportunities I wanted to at the previous role, so I'm really trying to see what's out there. Or, I thought I was going in for one role and really, want to get back to what I'm really excited about. Or, I just feel like I've capped my experience there and I want to make sure that those can sometimes feel, especially if you are maybe upset about your transition, or maybe you're having a poor experience. Recruiters have been doing this a long time, so they can pick up on those nuances, those voice inflections where like you're clearly like pissed off and like trying to get out of there, which is fair. But at the same time, they may not want to proceed if they feel like there's any, potential, bitterness or anything like that. Like, they want to feel as though that you are excited about the organization as a pathway for growth and not like bitterly transitioning, because, energy transfers. And so there is, there may be a concern that that energy might transfer there, even if you are being genuine and being like, hey, I wasn't really growing there. They weren't really maximizing me. And so I'm getting the heck out because Beverly told me to get out if I'm not getting what I deserve. I get it. And at the same time, talk about the forward movement so that you, again, are being seen as a forward thinker. And it's the psychology of demonstrating your preparedness to be able to start day one. Now, they may also ask you about benefits and your ceiling, floor, or salary, the whole thing, right? Now, what you've heard a lot from folks is for you to say to them, I'd love to hear from you what the range is. And ideally, again, especially in this market, a lot of companies are starting to be more transparent about their salary band. So if you go back to the JD and you see that the salary bands are there, that is the bands. They're not going to tell you anything that's different from what already is listed in the JD. So, a question at that point, now that you've seen it is, you can say, hey, so I've noticed in the bands here listed that this is the range, given my experience and what you're seeing here on paper, would you guesstimate or be able to assess whether or not I would fall at the top part of the spectrum or somewhere in the middle or somewhere at the bottom? Like, are you able to give me a bit more information as to kind of based off of your metrics where I fall, if you're able to share? Some recruiters might be able to tell you applicably based off of your experience, and most certainly after the assessment, like where they think you may fall. At the end of the day, though, they're not the hiring managers, so they may tell you like, oh, I can't really give you that information, but you can ask for a bit more localized range, given the fact that I know, at least in my experience, sometimes there would be different brackets based off of different experience levels. So you can ask more pointed questions relating to that. At the same time, going back to the previous video I did on your base and your floor, you should use this time to be transparent, most importantly about your floor, because at the end of the day, they are not going to want to waste your time and you don't want to have your time wasted. So if you are being forthcoming about asking them about where the salary range is and they tell you, and then you kind of have a sense, then you don't need to go there at that point because they have confirmed for you that that is what the range is. So you now are equipped with that information for the end stage negotiation period. But if they don't give you that information, then I want you to feel empowered to be able to have gone to my video and calculated the true floor and the true base, and then asking, directly like, hey, this is my floor based off of, my assessment of the market and ultimately where I'm looking to grow. I do have some wiggle room within there, and I am really excited about this opportunity. So, I just want to check in with you if this is applicable or if you feel like this is completely out of the scope. The reason that is important is because you're communicating that there's flexibility in there. So that's great for the recruiter, because if it's slightly above or slightly below or slightly wherever, the recruiter at least can go back to the hiring team and say, hey, I talked to this awesome candidate. They're really great. They have applicable and transferable skills relating to what we need. Their floor is a little out of what we need or a little out of the range or whatever the case, but they did say that they are willing to be negotiable. So I think we should move forward with them. That flexibility is going to be a game changer, because a lot of times folks will put their stake in the sand, and I get it. And that's also why having a floor that has a little bit of wiggle room makes you a collaborator at that point. And that's ultimately what you want. You want to be a collaborator with recruiters, with the hiring team, as it makes sense, especially for roles that you're really excited about, because then they'll be more inclined to work with you if throughout the process, they equally become excited about you. Now, at the end, they may ask you if you have any questions for them. Like I said previously, make sure